Hey, welcome to another edition of Kyle Meredith with. It's the interview series presented by WFPK at WFPK.org, Consequence, and the Consequence Podcast Network. Thanks as always for making your way here. Check out the series. Of course, you know what to do if you like what you see, what you hear. Hit that subscribe button. I put out 3 new interviews every single week, so it's a great way to keep up with your favorite artists. And I'm so excited today because Josh Radner is here. He's got his debut solo album called Eulogy Volume 1. Hello.
Hello. Hi, Kyle.
It's great to meet you. Been a fan for a long time, but I've also been watching what you've been doing musically. You come off 2 projects with another favorite of mine, Ben Lee, which was one of my very first interviews ever, like 15, 20 years ago. But now here it is. You're on your own. You've got a solo record. I hope you don't mind starting with the big broad topic, but what is the journey to here? How did you get to this album?
Well, I mean, there's the story of the album, and then there's the story of me becoming a songwriter, and we can go in either way. But maybe just more globally, I'll just talk about, I've always been a singer. That's how I got into acting. And then I've been a huge music fan, like an obsessive. Like if I like something, I go really down the rabbit hole with it. So I approached songwriting initially as a fan, and Ben Lee, who was one of my best friends for years, we talked about writing a song together. And one day we did, and we got a song we really liked. And next week we wrote another really good song. And then the next week he was like, let's make a record. And then Radner and Lee was born. And we put out 2 albums. And, I kind of had this incredible songwriting laboratory workshop apprenticeship with Ben. I mean, we were co-writing everything, music and lyrics, but he had the guitar, he had the, 2 decades of experience writing songs. So I really got to both put my vision forward and learn all these little tricks of the trade. And then halfway through our collaboration, I picked up a guitar, that Gibson acoustic that was sitting at my house for a long time that I wasn't really playing. And I knew a couple chords, and I was going through a breakup, which is a great impetus to write a song. And I wrote my first song on my own. And then something happened. Like I just picked up the guitar, songs poured out of me, melodies poured out of me, and I made another record with Ben while I was playing guitar, but then I just started writing my own stuff. And a couple years later, I'm overloaded with songs. I've been, I think of it as a kind of continuum. I'm just a storyteller, essentially. I participate in stories as an actor. I write and direct movies, and then I write like 3 to 4 minute stories set to music.
Yeah, and that's it. Like I think a lot of musicians, if you get lucky on your song, it's going to play like a mini movie. But there's something really special that does happen within you, and maybe that's because the type of songwriter you are. Maybe that's because you come from, acting. But the movies that happen within this album sound very painful, but are so much fun to listen to and watch. Yeah, and
I kind of I don't trust things that don't have humor in them, and I don't trust things on some level that don't have like tragedy or pathos in them, because I feel like life is just very complicated and dimensional, and it's hilarious and it's tragic all at the same time. So I feel we've all had the experience of, at the depths of like a kind of grief, you have like a kind of laugh that you just can't believe was so deep and hilarious, and that sometimes in the middle of beautiful moments, this kind of wash of melancholy will come over you. I don't know. That's my experience of life. It just feels, and so I want my music and all the things I make to kind of reflect. You're not going to get the totality of the experience, but at least holographically, to grab some of that. And the title Eulogy is not exactly an uplifting title, but there's a dancing skeleton on the cover, so I'm trying to. There's a mythologist named Martin Shaw that I listened to, who's just terrific. And he talked about how it's a lot sexier to be a human than an angel because we die. There's something about like the finitude, if that's the word, or, of our existence that gives it this like sexy, fleeting, sad, funny quality that you probably can't get if you're an infinite being of light.
No, I mean, especially, so many vampires on TV for the past decade. I think that's one of the things. Like my wife and I will argue that too. It's like, would you take immortality?
Right.
And she's no, she would not take it. And I'm like, yes. Give it.
I'm with your wife. I think there's something really, and my fiance, I just got engaged. My fiance is a psychologist, and her specialty is the connection between love and death. And I met her while I was recording this record. So this notion of eulogy and this idea of death, and one of the ways I've rationalized the title for myself is I think each of these songs is a bit of they're a little funeral for parts of myself that are serve me up to a point. And then you kind of have to have a little funeral for these parts of yourself that you can't really carry on, but you have to kind of say goodbye to. And it's nice to have the ability to, there's something, to write an elegy or a eulogy in song is so potent,
It's way more well, I won't say way more because I love this record to begin with, but I'm finding it an extra amount of interesting now knowing that you've met someone during this and you're engaged, because again, it's a heavy record in a lot of parts, and for the most part it does play like a breakup record. And I'm thinking, if it's anything like me, going through a breakup, you find this moment where you go a little bit mad, a little bit crazy.
Yeah.
But also when you find that someone new, it's like the biggest shot of caffeine, like like the way my brain works. And I don't know if that's with you, but that's interesting how that will play in this, because as you're saying goodbye and you're finding this new thing and this chemical reaction maybe that's happening inside of you, were you aware that was happening as you were producing these songs and how that had the effect on them?
Well, it was interesting because while I was recording this album in Nashville with my friends, Corey, Kyle, and Jeremiah, I was going through a breakup. I mean, I had a breakup kind of happen around November, December, and we recorded this album in February and March. So, and my ex was still in my house in LA, and I was kind of in exile from my house. And it was a really like tender, liminal, transitory moment. So, and that's when I met my fiance. And, it's hard to say. It's not like I had a breakup and sat down and wrote these 12 songs. What happened was I was backlogged with so much music. I put out an EP in 2021, but I just had so much music, and I was kind of lost. I didn't know where to go. I was in Ohio, kind of hiding out at my parents' house while they were in California. And my friend Kyle Cox, who's a great songwriter, and he said, "Why don't you come to Nashville and let's record a couple of your songs?" It turned out to be 23 songs, but I just went with my dad's car and my dog Nelson, and armed, with a bushel full of songs, rented an Airbnb. We, turned it into a studio, and I had this glorious month in Nashville. So it wasn't like I sat down and penned a breakup album, but the energy around it was both in some ways death and rebirth. Because this one part of my life was going away, and then this other part, which it was unforeseen, was about to click forward. I mean, I never like to make something that's wholly despairing, because I feel it's my responsibility, both as a human and as a storyteller, to kind of like, pull the plane out of a nosedive towards the end. Because I don't, I'm not a nihilist, right? Even though I honor and accept that life is really hard, but I'm not a nihilist. I'm wired to kind of find silver linings. So those are all laced through the record too.
Yeah. And to be fair, beyond the breakup, I mean, there are those moments I think you talked about in the press release as well, but like Red, right from the beginning, feels like an opus. Like when I heard it first and the way it played, I started wondering if this is a song that sets up the record in any sort of way. And hearing you talk about, was it channeling the rebellious adolescence that I never felt I was allowed to be? Like, that's a big line right there. That's like, how does that song set up the record?
Well, that song I was inspired by this Robert Bly talk called The Masculine Road. Robert Bly was I think a very award-winning poet, but he also pioneered a lot of men's work. And he was very interested in kind of masculine wounding and stuff. And he has this talk that's fascinating called The Masculine Road. And he says there's 3 phases of a man's life, and they correspond to the first 3 colors we see when we are children, which are red, white, and black. And red is, I was going to do a 3-song cycle called Red, White, and Black. I haven't written White and Black yet, but I did write Red. And red is this kind of fiery, hot, lusty, rebellious, fuck you, mom and dad. I don't need anyone. I'm, hedonistic kind of, it's just this young, fiery, angry time in one's life before you kind of find who you are and realize that all that anger is not serving you. So I don't know. It was early pandemic, and I was just listening to that talk, and I said, I'm going to write a song called Red, and I kind of just channeled this part of me that I was a good kid. I grew up in a family where it was like kind of there wasn't an option to be like a bad kid. It was just like you just were like you behaved and you got good grades. And some of my rebellion went into the shadows. I mean, I was a drinker and I did my things, but outwardly I was very a menschy kid. And so Red was kind of this I don't know, reparative act of going back and letting myself musically, at least, and poetically have some rage, have some just be kind of an asshole in a song from a kid's perspective, from a teenager's perspective, but there's something he's spitting great truths, and I think he is spitting them because they're backlogged and he's angry. And it's I like it as the opener because it's a real shot across the bow. It's like, I think it's a bold way to open a record. And it's also, the record is a journey. So I think starting in youth, and then at the end, you get into songs like Learning and Joshua 45-46, which are much more of an older man's acceptance, surrender, and reflection.
Yeah. Learning, I wrote down that line too. Can't shake the feeling that it could end. Because, as a listener, we find our moments that we relate, that that we accept as our own. And that's one of those lines that I've always had, like, no matter what, no matter how good it could be, it's almost like you hear about, the grandparents that grew up during the Depression. Yeah. And what they still hoard in the garage or in the basement. It's like that's basically everything that I've ever applied to my life.
Yeah, and it's hard, and we inherit a lot of that, kind of generationally. We can inherit some of that feeling of like, this isn't going to last or this isn't solid. But I also think that's a consequence of being human. That life is pretty fragile, right? And there are plenty of stories of just life changing in an instant. And so it's we tiptoe here. You know what I mean? Like it's a delicate thing to be human.
Sure. Well, while I'm talking about some of the songs, Pretty Angel, which follows Red, is really something special.
Thanks.
I mean, the light and playfulness of it, but that melody, I really think you like it. What do I want to say? I'm going to go cheesy. It just feels like a hug. It feels very comfortable, if that makes sense.
Right. Pretty Angel is one of the first songs I wrote that I said, this is a real song. Like this felt like it needed to be on the record. And I'll tell you a fun thing about that. It might have been in the little notes you got. I don't know, but it's basically about this very universal thing of not being able to sleep, and then your mind being overrun with regret and why did I say that, and fear and all these things. But we decided at the end of Red, it says all I'm seeing is, and it normally says red, but we cut it off. And I said to the guys, Jeremiah, Corey, and Kyle, I said, I wish I had a song that started with the word red. And I said, wait, I do, because Pretty Angel starts, read all the news, I know all the views, now I got the blues, And so there's a fun little Easter egg in there where red cuts off and then the next word. And then there's also something about Pretty Angel that I thought, in the story of the record, it's a man who can't sleep and is haunted by regret and roads not taken or the wrong roads taken. And he's up, and maybe the whole album is this guy who can't sleep.
Yeah.
That whole thing is this kind of dream.
Yeah.
Or lucid kind of dream.
Right. And I'll tell you one of the surprising ones too on it too, when you get down, since we're talking about, that it's like you get that you can sleep alone. I bring that up because of sleep. But also this finds you in a different world, which was kind of fun, musically speaking. It's a little bit country. Reminds me of sort of a slow dance on a rooftop, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But where did that one come from? Because again, that's sort of musically, it's set apart from everything else that you were doing, just a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you end up just basically like playing with different chord progressions that put you in a different world. Like I write a lot of like C, F, G, A minor, E minor kind of stuff, which is, very standard, but that's in E. So it's E, A, B7 the whole time. And in some ways it puts you in like a kind of Hank Williams world immediately. But I make a joke when at my live shows, when I play that, so many songs are like, baby, come on over, baby, it's cold outside, I'm lonely. And this is like a different genre, which is maybe I shouldn't call them. Maybe this person isn't good for me. And I was in, I was trying to grow up around, women and sex as a lot of us are or have or, are hoping to. And I was seeing someone whenever I would come to New York that I just thought she was lovely. She was a really kind, cool person. There was a lot of attraction between us, but I knew it wasn't going to go any further. And I had already called it off, but I was at this hotel in New York on a work thing. And I was dying to call her. Like I really wanted to call her and reconnect. And I was lonely. And I thought, oh, wouldn't it be great to see, her? And instead of calling her, I wrote this song to myself, You Can Sleep Alone Tonight, which is really like, like in a hugging kind of context, like Pretty Angel. It was like singing myself to sleep. Say like, you don't have to reach out. Like, it's okay to be alone tonight. You can weather this. I think some of my favorite songs also double as slight prayers. And I mean that like, not in any sort of, not aligned with any religion, but they're just yearning or prayers for some sort of shift in consciousness or mood.
That's a nice moment when the character of this album really does start to believe in themselves a little bit more, or start to take a turn.
A great Nashville songwriter. She's a friend of mine, and she came into the studio and just melted our faces off with all this harmony. And I give her a credit in the song because she just lifted it into another zone.
Yeah. Do you get to have any fun in Nashville? I mean, it sounds like an intense month that you're there, but I guess I'm there all the time. It's right down the road, so I know how Nashville can play.
I have found myself as like an East Nashville person. I feel like East Nashville feels like the Brooklyn or Los Feliz of Nashville and those places I live normally. So I just really took to it. I mean, I was pretty residential when I lived there. I hung with the restaurants in the neighborhood. I had my dog, I'd walk my dog Nelson and listen to our day's work kind of, and then talk to my now fiance as we were getting to know each other. So my memories of Nashville, I mean, I've certainly been to the restaurants and the music venues, but when I think about Nashville, I more think about like quiet moonlit streets, walking around with my dog, listening to the album.
It's a really good memory because that's non-traditional for the way a lot of people, might spend it down there. I kind of like that. But that's you used something in the notes that I was going to hit on too. I know I'm thinking about Nashville and just what it means musically and all that stuff. But you said the word North Star, and I think you were talking about Alexi Murdoch, which is a phrase I use a lot, but I don't hear a lot of people use it in the context of, we talk music, we talk influences. My interviews, I'll got Bowie behind me, and for a lot of time I'll say, well, that's my musical North Star right there.
Right.
I base a lot on Bowie. I don't know if you still find that you're finding your voice, but since this is a debut, do you hear your influences? Do you still have your North Stars musically that you're looking at in these songs?
I think so. It's funny that you said a breakup record, because I would say my favorite albums are breakup records. Essentially, I mean, Joni Mitchell's Blue is kind of like at the top of the pyramid, and really up there with Damien Rice's O, because when that record came out, I heard it on, when I was in LA more, I was a big KCRW listener, and I remember Nick Harcourt had him in the studio, and I didn't catch who he was. I just heard this voice that sounded like nothing I'd ever heard, and I ended up seeing him like 8 times in the next 2 years, and I went so deep on that record. I would like, iPods were kind of new, and I would like walk up to people that I would just met and be like, you have to listen to this. Like I was really proselytizing for that record. And the feeling that I got from watching Damien Rice play in those early years in small clubs. He wasn't, Closer hadn't come out yet. He hadn't really exploded, but the feeling, whatever he was doing to me, is something that I am chasing as a songwriter. I mean, certainly I probably have more up tempo stuff than he does, and more there might be more. I don't know. I don't know how to compare it, but there was something that some of his songs were doing to me that were so soul enriching and heart opening, and that's what I'm chasing, whatever that is. And I continue to think that album is like a perfect thing.
And an artist who's playing on his own time. I mean,
you're not going to rush him putting out a record. Yeah,
I'm always amazed at the artists who can do that, and they've all got their reasons. Similarly, sort of similar for Paolo Nutini, his record came out this year, or last year, and it was like 7 or 8 years before that. And I think about him and Damien and Fiona Apple and those artists. It's like, how do you do that? And then you have an artist like Jacob Dylan, and he's the type of artist who just doesn't write in the middle. Somebody says, hey, you probably need to make a record, and he says, okay, hang on.
Yeah. I heard I think Alanis Morissette used to do that. Like, she would go into the studio just with her journals. I think it was her. I could be thinking of someone else, but that idea of just like booking a studio without any songs feels bonkers to me. It's just not my way. Like, it's funny. My collaboration with Ben was it brought up the differences in our personality in a really fun way. He is much more like, he has very little lag time between idea and execution. And he's like, let's lay it down, or let's film it and put it online. And I'm like, shouldn't we take 4 or 5 cracks at it and try to get it as good as we can? Like, I'm much more of a drafts guy, and I have so many orphaned, choruses and half-written songs, and I get back to a lot of them, but I let them be until such time. I'm actually did you watch the Leonard Cohen Hallelujah documentary?
Yeah. I saw that. Yeah.
But I'm so inspired by his both workman-like, almost like blue-collar approach to songwriting, while also being like, yeah, this song took me 7 years. I wrote 60 verses. You know what I mean? Like, there's something so great about, and then someone like Dylan writes masterpieces in 15 minutes, and that's just how he's wired. And sometimes a song will feel more channeled, like you sit down and it's just there. And other times I'm really chiseling away at it. And I have a song that's, not on this record. It's one of my favorite songs I've written. It's for Jordana, my fiance. And there was just 2 lines. I could not get them for months. And one day they just appeared. But I like, it's kind of the Nick Cave thing. My muse is not a horse. Like, you want to really be delicate with the muse and let it work on its own time while also showing up to work regardless.
Yeah. Keep those receptors up, as they say. But you did the thing, though. You did the thing with an album. You called something Volume 1, which is either tongue-in-cheek or it's all these leftover songs. You've already got a plan.
No, there's a Volume 2. It's not coming out for a while. Volume 2 is much more kind of basement tapes, acoustic. It's just a bunch of songs that, I mean, there's a little harmonica on it with the guitar, but it was just after Kyle's kids went to sleep, we just kind of straight to taped a bunch of songs, and I love it. I love that part of it, but there is a Volume 2. Although I think Tom Waits just has like a Volume 1 that never had a Volume 2, right? Like,
yeah. Or you can, Waits done that. You can do the Wilburys thing where it was Volumes 1 and 3.
Right.
Because that's, and I always said, like, if you were the type of musician who, we don't do it as much anymore with the greatest hits, but you put out a greatest hits after 3 records and you called it Volume 1, it's like, oh, you just dug your own grave.
Right.
There's no Volume 2, buddy.
There is something ballsy about it, at the very least. You're kind of where you want the home run to
go. Beyond the music, you've also got the newsletter that occasionally arrives. I love reading that. Is that just, again, inspiration when it happens? Do you have a plan for that?
I wish I did more of them. They end up, they take a lot of time. They're a lot of work. I would love to do one every 2 months. I end up doing one every 3 or 4 months, but you can find them. They're sign upable. They're free. I think I'm switching over to Substack. But I just write a kind of essay-ish thing on where I'm at, or some thoughts I've been having, and then I link a bunch of things I've been listening to or watching or reading that I'm finding inspiring. And I've been doing it for a lot of years, and people seem to really like them. I'm glad you're a reader. I appreciate the newsletter shout out.
Yeah, man. I mean, and as you said, it's you kind of giving that to what you're listening, what you're watching, what you're reading, especially. I've taken those notes in the past, and it's like, yeah, kind of look that up. I always appreciate that stuff, especially. So please do
Cool.
continue whenever that hits you.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah. Yeah. And in the meantime, Eulogy, Volume 1, it's really great. I love it. I love what you've done here. I'm so looking forward to Volume 2. What's the year look? I mean, I know in the film world, everybody's got some time on their hands these days. So you taking the opportunity as a tour?
Yeah. I've got a couple dates lined up. We're going to announce them soon. Nothing major, just because I don't have the bandwidth. I'm also planning a wedding.
Sure.
But we have Red is coming out. The singles, I think September 15th, I think, or 17th. I think 15th.
Mm-hmm.
And then every 3 weeks, I got another single. There's two more in New York City. Well, I won't tell you what they are, but they're coming out, and the album's coming out in November. So I really appreciate you letting your listeners know about it, and I hope people find the record. I'm super proud of it.
And thanks to my guest. Also, thanks to you for checking out the episode in the series. Before you get out of here, hit that subscribe button. Again, you get 3 brand new interviews every single week. New one every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at right here on YouTube, or of course anywhere in podcast land, including iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podchaser, NPR, or WFPK.org as well. A great way to keep up with your favorite artists and discover new ones as well. Then after that, actually head over to WFPK.org. That's where I do a show Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern. It's an hour full of song premieres, music news, anniversary spins, bonus interviews, Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern at WFPK.org. Consequence has your music and film news. You can also find me on the social media spots, Facebook, Instagram, mostly on Twitter. All 3 of them, the address is at Kyle Meredith. Do hope you like and follow along. That does it for another edition. I'm Kyle Meredith. I'll see you next time.